Purple Ties Podcast. Great stories of Trevecca Trojans and life on the hill.
Hello, friends. I'm Michael Johnson, and alongside our good friend, Coach Omar Mance, we're assisted this afternoon in our taping by producer, engineer extraordinaire, David Klimkowski. As Greg Ruff likes to point out, he's in an undisclosed location, and I literally don't know where David is right now. But looking forward to a good conversation here with a wonderful man and somebody that, in some respects, is still somewhat new to the Trevecca community, having completed now 2 seasons as the head coach of the Trojan men's basketball team. Welcome in, Coach Omar Mance. Good to see you today, Coach O.
Great seeing you. Great seeing you. Always glad to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
Hey, just real quickly, for folks who've not met you yet, give everybody a quick rundown of your life in basketball and life with your family. Just give us a quick insight into where you came from, and then we'll talk about how you got to Trevecca.
Yeah, no, I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia. Played for my dad in high school. Eric Mance was a legendary high school coach there. Coached for over 35 years and over 500 wins, and truly impacted a lot of schools there, and was highly recruited out of high school. My mom was an educator for over 35 years in special ed. And so they really push academics as well as, excellence athletically, and was recruited really high and ended up going to LSU out of high school and playing there, which was really cool, and played for John Brady and Donnie Tyndall and Kermit Davis were all on that staff, which is pretty funny. Yeah, it's interesting. But it was an awesome experience. Played well as a freshman, and it was kind of my faith journey as well. I ended up transferring from LSU and going to Rice, finishing out at Rice and having a great career there. And from Rice, then going and playing international and doing some different things with Athletes in Action and some professional, but also some ministry opportunities through basketball. And when you're a coach's kid and you're around the game so much, it's hard to run away from it. Met my beautiful wife, Beck, who was doing so much ministry in sports as well, and ended up, influencing and impacting lives for Christ through basketball. And the coaching journey from there, from a player to a coach, has been really cool to see.
So tell me about the day that you got the call from Mark Elliott, but I've also heard you say maybe it was a call from God in a sense. Well, tell me about that moment when you first really began to think, hey, I might need to go to Nashville and be the coach at Trevecca.
Yeah, no, as a coach, you always want to progress, you want to get better, and I had some great coaches, some mentors, from Richie McKay, who was at Liberty, Zach Spiker when I was at Army, Rice University, and then at Vanderbilt, where Bryce Drew was. And so Nashville was a place that was near and dear to our heart. And the Trevecca story is another story for another day. But, really just talking to Mark about his vision, we were actually talking about other people potentially involved. And the Lord just really put on my heart to be a head coach. And part of that, my dad ended up passing away when I was at Vanderbilt as a coach. And I really felt it was time to lead, time to really, influence lives for Christ as a leader. And so the opportunity at Trevecca made no sense, in my career path as far as being at Vanderbilt and Rice. But God just, really, showed me some great things about Trevecca, Mark Elliott, Dan Boone. I just felt called to Nashville, the heart of Nashville, and to impact lives. So the mission of the university was so close to my heart as a guy who's strong in his faith. It was an opportunity I couldn't turn down.
So you're getting ready to enter year 3, and Greg Ruff and I did a fun show with you not too long ago, but where we talked about the basketball side of it. I know you're really excited about the team that you have coming in this year, but since we last talked, the implications of what's happening with the coronavirus, a reduction in games for this coming year. You go from only, NCAA Division II, you have 28 games you can play, and that's been reduced to 22 now, as I understand it. So there's a big change there. But even since that word has come down from the NCAA, obviously, in these past couple of weeks, our nation has really been, in many respects, torn by the scenes of obvious pain and injustice, and now we're dealing with really a whole other kind of onslaught. The coronavirus pandemic, whatever term we use with that, we've tried to take safeguards to protect ourselves from that and make plans for the coming year. But it was brand new. They call it a novel coronavirus, new. We're dealing with a different kind of situation now that's been around for a long time, and it's no secret that you are a groundbreaker at Trevecca as the first African-American head coach that we have in one of our sports. And I know that that's meaningful to you, and it's meaningful to me and to our university. But I just wonder if there are things that you have been processing even in these last few days about what it means to hold that distinction, but also what it means to you personally. Would you have something you could share with us about, what's God saying to you about what your role is right now in the life of our university, but really even beyond that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate this opportunity. And, I'm big on, instead of public proclamations, I told someone, whether it's social or whatever, I'm really great on private conversations and relationship. And so just me and you having a conversation today, and even prior to this, multiple times, it's for our nation and for our community, for our city, for our team, for our university. This is a great time for James 1:19 and 20. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, because in our anger, the righteousness of God is not what God desires. Like, we can't get the righteousness of God when we're angry. And so this has been great. And just as I go and you're listening, this is an awesome part for us. It's really personal, obviously, as a African-American man, growing up in Atlanta. My dad grew up in the South, one of the first African-American males at his high school when there was segregation to integration. Just knowing that this is not a documentary for me. It's not, it is our life that we've lived, from our mom and our dad, my grandparents, to the history of our nation. Growing up in Atlanta during the civil rights time, our parents talked about Martin Luther King and all that happened there. He was the coach at Martin Luther King High School in Atlanta. And so these are things that I've lived with. And obviously to see it, the death of George Floyd is horrific. And it brings up for some people a visceral effect. When you see it, it just reminds what has happened in the past, what's happened maybe more recent, and maybe even today. For me, even as a college kid, things have happened, and even as an adult here in Nashville, it just brings a visceral effect. And sometimes that can be anger, sometimes that can just frustration, but it's super emotional. I told people that there's 3 lenses you can fall in when you see it. Number one, you can see it and there's no personal connection, there's no personal tie, and so you see it and it's awful, but you kind of keep it moving. The second, the middle group, is you see it and it hurts and you say, what can we do? That's not right. How can we help? We see our brothers hurting. And then the third is people who are personally affected. They have a personal response, and it could be to anything that something happens to someone. They see it and they feel something personal. And the great part about that, and you'll appreciate this, Michael, is all 3 are okay. It's okay not to have that visceral response, because you don't know what that looks like. It's okay to want to do change and not be as angry. And it's okay sometimes to let out your frustration, because it's super personal. What's not okay is for us not to do anything, not to show the love of Christ. As believers, we have an opportunity to show that God's love never fails. And we know that all this can be summed up as the world needs Jesus, that we need to turn our hearts to Christ. Hate can be eradicated by the love of God. And what God did is always inserted himself in the lives of those that were hurting. So in our community, a lot of people are hurting, including me. I have a responsibility to our team, not only as African American male, but for everybody. I look at my beautiful wife and our son, and I think, man, there's hope in my own family of reconciliation and restoration that God's family doesn't have. It's all colors. It's everything. And so that hope is really cool, but it has to start with love. And I just encourage our players personally, our community, to love those in your community if they're hurting. If someone's hurting, just listen, number one, like we said, James 1:19, and be okay to be able to instill hope. But also there may be a little forgiveness because some people may be just angry and acting out of fear. And so it's okay to give a little forgiveness because people need to know that they're loved. And then you'll know this, and I'll bounce it off to you because I really appreciate this opportunity for you just to listen. There's a lot that needs to be changed. There's a lot that needs to be done. But if the hearts of man don't change, it doesn't matter. If people aren't actually doing things behind the words that we put out there, it's irrelevant. And so for me personally, our guys know that we do some things, and we're going to continue to do things that we can actually affect change by the things that we do within our own program. We did things within the inner city with African-American kids and socioeconomic backgrounds right in Napier by Trevecca. And those relationships were racial barriers that were broken for our team. And I just think, man, how God put these things right in our lap, that if we can act and do some things on it from the heart, from the inner part, a lot of these other things can change. But thank you for this opportunity for me to just allow me to share my thoughts. But it has been really hard and difficult, but it's been encouraging because of God's love, the hope that's in him, in Christ. One day there won't be tears. God will wipe them away. There'll be a new heaven, a new earth, Revelations 21:4. But there's also a direction I can do as a leader to be able to help guide this behind the scenes and in the front.
So, man, that's just so inspiring. Thank you for sharing that vision of hope. I think it would be fair to follow up at this point, though, to say that you yourself know what it means to have the sting of these kinds of moments that we've seen. I think you maybe mentioned in a conversation previously about a time while there you are, scoring points on the basketball court at Rice, but when you leave the gym, you go get in a car. You're just a regular guy to some people. Is it okay if you recount a moment or two that you personally have experienced what this is like, and then how you responded? Because I think that really is what will help us, make true progress in this whole arena.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking that. I think my experience is also great for everyone on our team and in our community. Number one, you mentioned before, just my role at Trevecca being African-American male. I want people in Trevecca's community, students, student athletes, I want them to know I'm here for them. I'm also a space, an open space to have dialogue, a safe space to have conversation, to know that the leadership position, people are here and we're here for you. I think that's a big thing that I wanted to say while I'm on this podcast, that the Trevecca community, I'm here for you, and there's others as well. Broderick Thomas, who's Director of Diversity and Racial Reconciliation, Desmond Pierce, who's a Compliance Director, people who can relate, and you may need a shoulder to lean on. But with that being said, I went to Rice, which is a small private school in Houston. Very similar, if you think of Trevecca, a small private school in Nashville. So you have a lot of diversity coming onto a campus in a major city. And so I had an incident, which these things happen a lot to me, which is not a negative, it's just reality. And when people ask, like this part, we're listening, which is awesome. You're able to hear why people may be upset, angry, disappointed, or want any kind of change. But I remember, having an incident with a police on campus where they were super aggressive with me, and I'm a senior basketball player, and literally a student comes out of the blue, a white guy, and he grabs the student newspaper, and on the front page is Omar Mance shooting a shot, scores 20 something points last night. He's like, this is the guy you're saying suspicious, and it was a moment there where obviously, I could be angry and frustrated. And again, however people respond to things that hurt them, I always give them space.
Yeah.
Some people are not as calm as I am. Others may react differently. But in that moment, I had the opportunity to share the love of Jesus Christ. Because at the end of the day, one thing against hate or anything is love. God's love, it never fails. So me being able to show love, the police officer literally took a step back and, campus police like, oh, man, I'm sorry. And then that student who may have never seen it before, he was open to something. And think about the 3 levels we talked about where someone sees something, they're like, man, I don't relate. What can I do? And so from that moment, we ended up having a great conversation, met with the campus police chief. We actually started doing some programs with our team. I'm an inner city guy from Atlanta. There's a lot of international kids from all over. And so we were able to tell our stories of things that hurt us or make us uncomfortable. The police officers were able to tell us, hey, we're just trying to serve our community, but we obviously didn't realize you're a part of our community, and let's work through those. And so we started putting some programs in place and build a strong relationship with people that hadn't done it before. And that was part of, as I say, direction. You provide love. There's hope that this doesn't happen again and we can learn from it. And then there's a direction that we can move forward that it really empowers people. And that's something I'm excited about, not only for this issue, because this is super important as African-American, but for all the issues that we have on our campus. There's other people that may feel marginalized or are persecuted or don't feel welcome. We want to make sure we do whatever we can to make sure that doesn't happen. That's systematically. So that was a cool response for me because I was able to share the love of Christ. Forgiveness and reconciliation happened right there. But also we were able to build a relationship. And that's so important. The relationship piece in this is number one. For me and you to even be talking right now in the midst of what's going on, to build a relationship on, hey, what's next? That was a cool thing that happened to me as a student athlete. And those experiences I love to share because it may speak to someone similar to me or someone who doesn't even know how to process what's going on right now because they're not as connected.
If you had an opportunity to say to people who don't yet know you, they don't know Trevecca, they don't know really what it means to be connected to the body of Christ that you've alluded to several times in your comments. If you could say something to white people who are struggling with how to be the right kind of advocate and ally, what are 1 or 2 things that a person like I could do, or people who you've never even met yet? They're in that camp of, man, I see this and it doesn't feel right, but I don't know what to do about it. What do you say to that, Coach?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And the bigger part for me is about relationship. As a body of Christ, as a group of people who the church is looked on to love others, if anyone in your community, neighborhood, let's say university, neighborhood, city is hurting, you want to do what you can to help those that are hurting. And for some people, it may just simply be a note, a text, an email to say, hey, I love you. I'm praying for you. I don't know how you feel because obviously I'm not connected, but I'm here for you. How can I help? What we're doing today on this podcast is the first step is listening, right? I think no matter what you see on social media, on TV, you can take it in your lens and usually anger could come out on either side. In this moment, you have to say, hey, someone in our community is hurting, whoever it is, even if it's just Coach O or a couple guys on our basketball team because we watch them play, or a couple students that we see passing, but we don't know them. If they're hurting, how can I help? And how can I show God's love? Number 2, I do think there's elements where we're listening to hear. How can we also affect that change? So maybe it's behind the scenes with programs. Maybe it's connecting things that already exist within the inner city right here in Nashville or at Trevecca and getting involved. But none of these occur without listening or reaching out to show your love. Because I know that God has always told us, we know we pass from death to life because we love our brothers and sisters. And for me, I think you can show that by loving your neighbors as yourself. So if this is happening today because people are hurt, in a month, in 2 months, in a year, if someone else in our community, if you're hurting, Michael, it's not going to be hard for me to reciprocate that love and encouragement back to you, because I remember even when you didn't know how to connect, Coach, should I post? Should I not post? Should I say something? Should I not say something? You should let the flow of your heart and those personal relationships you have, make sure they know that you're there and you love them. And because I know at the end of the day, I will want you to do that to me, and I'm going to want to do that to you. And that's what's so cool about Trevecca, about you guys and me being here, is I know at the end of the day to show God's love no matter what they're going through.
I think for me, in terms of just even this exchange today, some of the ways in which we see people acting out in frustration, understandably so, feeling a sense of hopelessness and like, is this ever going to change? I am convinced that there do need to be some systemic changes that are enacted within our society and within our country. But I was having a conversation with my brother, who's a very wise man. He said, systems are great, but systems have to be administered by people. And if we don't find a way to humanize this situation in a way where we look at a fellow human being, regardless of race, as precious in the sight of God, as significant in the eyes of Christ when he was hung on that cross. There wasn't any barrier to his love for humankind in that moment. And I think, from my perspective, one of the reasons why we struggle with this sometimes, especially in a majority, from a majority standpoint, is that we don't look at the situation in terms of how it's feeling to another person. We think about how it feels to us, and our feelings override the feelings of another person, which in some respects allows us to assume a greater level of importance in our mind than another person. And for me, I don't have time to tell my own story about how I came to fully understand some of these issues. But I am telling you today that this moment between us is the kind of thing that will change the world, I believe. A fair and honest assessment of what it is that we're dealing with, but also understanding one another and how we can help each other be better. And I thank you for what you've spoken into my life personally, Omar. And I believe that God has you here at Trevecca at a special time, for these moments that we're experiencing right now, but also to win some ball games too. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Thank you so much for your honesty with us, and for sharing who you are. This is not coach speak here today. This is Omar Mance, the man. And I'm grateful to count you among my friends, and grateful for the role that you play in the life of our campus. Is there anything else that you think of right now that you'd want to share in closing?
No, I appreciate your honesty and transparency. And I've said it before, Christ's love is the one thing that's supreme. And for me as a coach, our players, they have to know we care for them, we love them, and we're directing them to Christ. I would encourage everyone to keep the main thing the main thing. I think there's a lot of code words or things you can see on TV, and it shifts off to a political issue, it shifts off to anger, it shifts off to all these reactions, as opposed to the main thing, which is God's love. Our world needs Jesus. Our world needs God's love in these times, and they need it after. We needed it during COVID-19. We needed to return to Christ, and that's why I'm here as a coach for all of my players. All of my guys, I want them to know that, man, Coach O is going to always guide us to the light. He's always going to transform our lives for Christ before any and everything. And this is a great moment for us as a university, a program, a church, a body to guide people to Christ.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach, for your time.
Thank you.
That's Omar Mance. I'm Michael Johnson. And for David Klimkowski in the studio, this is Purple Ties. We'll see you again.
Purple Ties Podcast. Great stories of Trevecca Trojans and life on the Hill.